to Revolutionary Gazette. I'm Will. Well, as we take our journey back, we need to figure out how to survive in this journey, and Jacob's with me today, and he's going to teach me a skill that I have in the 19th, 20th, and 21st century, but I have no idea what to do in the 18th century. Jacob, if we're going to stay here for the night before we walk on to the next place we're heading, we need to build a fire.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be light, it's going to be warmth, it's going to be comfort, and it's hopefully going to improve the food that we have.
Greatly.
What do I do?
So the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously find combustible material. So in this case, what we're working with is some old wood. Now, it's possible that if you're going out on a planned sort of trek, or if you're out on campaign or anything like that, you may have some simple pieces of wood like this with you. But obviously, if that's not the case, then you'll go out and you'll likely forage for, the best that you can find to build a fire.
Okay, great. And we need to use it just like this?
No, absolutely not. So yeah, you're going to have to split it. And now we, actually have the benefit of wood that can split pretty easily. If that's not the case, most people that are heading out, whether it's as a soldier or someone who's just venturing, out on the road, typically going to have some sort of small axe with them. By splitting the wood, making it a little bit smaller, you're going to be able to make much quickly, much safely, a small cooking fire that you can use really just to heat up your food. And that's going to be sort of the big goal, obviously, is sustenance.
And I see you're not taking a whack at that right now. You're actually using a stone there.
Right. So what I'm doing here is using a stone as a mallet rather than, just going, hacking away and potentially cutting off a finger. This is a little bit of a safer method to quickly, split your firewood without necessarily worrying about, your fingers getting in the way.
Great. Can I give that a try on one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And let's see. So something like this we'd want to bring down one more time, I assume.
Yeah. There you go.
There we go. Excellent.
So then what I like to do whenever I get into building is usually take these pieces, make it a little bit smaller. And then for me, personally, I like to go with the log cabin method.
Okay.
So I'll get started here by just simply building a foundation to get my fire started. Choke it in a little bit, and I'll build it typically pretty high. So with the slats sort of in the log cabin here, what that's going to do is allow airflow to come in through the slats, allow the air to go up, and then it's going to help sort of give more oxygen to our fire whenever we have our tinder bundle, which is what we're going to get to next.
All right, so tinder.
So I have a couple things here for tinder. Now this can be foraged. As you can see, it's just punky old wood. We have some moss, but basically you just want something that's going to be pretty combustible. If I'm outside and I don't have access to tow, which is a byproduct of linen production, this might be, my next best bet.
Let me say this here. We've got a piece of tow that we sourced here.
Yeah.
So you compare the two.
So this, keeping it in your pack, keeping it on your person, it's going to be pretty typical. But let's say you don't have any tow on you and you need to forage from the surrounding landscape. I also have here my fire starting kit. Now inside of the kit, as you can see, I have more tow because that's going to be very important. I have a striker made of steel. I have several pieces of flint that you can see haven't really been formed into, a flint that you might associate with a musket or something along those lines. These are really just nice pieces of flint that have been knapped a little bit just to have a nice edge.
When you say knapped, talk to me about what that term means.
So whenever you're knapping a piece of flint, that usually means that you're going to take sort of a small hammer or sometimes even just a rock that's not as brittle, and you'll glance at the side until you kind of hone it into an edge is sort of the best way to think about it.
Okay.
Now this flint, for example, if I were to run my finger along it, would probably be sharp enough to slice my finger. So the sharper the flint, the better for whenever you're attempting to make a fire. And then finally, the most important part of all this is char cloth. Char cloth is basically cloth that introduced to heat and sort of baked off is kind of the best way I can describe it. Turns linen, which I believe you have a piece of linen there, turns linen just like this, a nice fine linen, into something that you can use to catch a spark. And that spark in that char cloth is going to be essential to getting your combustible material to combust. Now, linen like this, a lot of people will have scrap linen, whether it's from an old shirt, an old garment, old piece of clothing, or just an old bag that they have around their house. In the 18th century, this is a society where people do not waste. This is a time where material is very expensive.
So that linen might have started as a shirt, became a handkerchief or a rag, and now we're going to give it a third recycling, if you will, and make it char cloth.
Yep, exactly. So before we even get started on trying to catch this with any sort of spark, let's first talk about just how to make sparks.
Okay.
So the idea is that you don't want to smash right into it because that's just going to break your flint.
Okay.
So you want to do a glancing blow. So by glancing over top of it, and unfortunately you can't quite see in the sunlight, there is a shower of sparks coming off that flint.
So I'm more here.
Yep, so find your sharpest edge, kind of come straight down at it and glance past it.
There's a little bit of spark.
Yeah, I see that. So now that you're making decent showers of sparks, let's introduce the char cloth. So by simply taking your char cloth, putting it right up against the edge of your flint.
Top or bottom?
It doesn't matter, just wherever you think it's going to be able to catch that spark. So you can put it right up to the edge and then start striking. Kind of stop every few seconds, see if you've managed to catch a spark. It also sometimes helps too if you fold over your char cloth.
Ooh, that's okay. I caught it and I didn't know it because that got really warm.
Okay, so I think you've caught a spark there. So if you want to fan it in the air a little bit, there you go, and you can see that you are smoldering. So we'll do a little hybrid. We'll take some of our tow, take some of our forage
Oh, you can
material.
sure see that smoldering, and I can feel it, so you'd better get that boy ready to go.
So you just put that in your tinder bundle and start to blow. And there you go. Your tinder bundle has caught fire. You want to rearrange
To bring the log cabin
your
in
kindling
both
here.
sides. Wow.
Yep, put a ceiling on that.
And I'm not using modern matches. I'm not using a lighter. Pretty much other than the char cloth, everything I've used to make this fire, other than what we're going to burn, is reusable.
Exactly. That's the nice thing too, is that, matches, because there were, matches in the 18th century, not like we necessarily think of today, but those matches can get wet. Obviously, if you're trying to carry a smoldering ember with you, there's not always a good chance that that smoldering ember is going to be still smoldering by the time you get to your next camp. So having a simple fire starting kit with just a flint, steel, and char cloth, those three main ingredients, you can get a fire started pretty much anywhere as long as you have dry wood.
I mean, look at it. This is my first time using it, and suddenly we're not even blowing on it. We're letting the breeze here today blow on it, and we're started already.
Sometimes if you can take your hat off, fan it a little bit, sort of help it along. It also helps too if you just get down in there.
Oh, you found the angle? I could hear that. I'm a bit of a firebug, and I recognize that sound.
Also helps too if you are noticing that you're not having quick combustion, adding in some more tow or char cloth, again, more of that combustible material.
More of the tinder.
Exactly, to be able to take off.
Well, I can see that starting to get the sides of the kindling that we started there,
Yeah.
or the larger sticks for tinder. Let me ask you this. How do we turn this nice white linen into this last piece of recycled linen, and that is our char cloth?
So going off of a little bit what I said before, you're going to want to take a small tin, and you're going to want to put that linen inside of the tin, and then you're going to put that tin directly into some coals or even over a fire. And essentially what you're going to do is bake off that linen. Is sort of the best way I can describe it. So I know you have a
I've
tin.
got something here, and we've prepared it ahead of time.
So this could be an old tin, maybe you're keeping your tobacco in it, but now it's being reused again, and we've popped some holes in the top because that is important. You need oxygen so that it can escape.
I assume we're going to get this. I don't want to cut the char cloth to size. I want to cut the linen mortise.
Right.
And once I get it started, of course, linen's going to rip along its line. So how are these?
Yeah, those would be some decent pieces. And if you just sort of fit them in there.
Do we need to worry about any sticking out? Obviously, it'll burn off, but it won't burn in or anything there.
It'll just singe right off, and then you'll just set that right on top. And then what you want to look for is you want to see if any sort of smoke starts to come out of the holes on top. And you can always just take it off to check that. Whenever you start to see that smoke come out, you may want to take the lid off, see if your char cloth is totally black. At that point, you do have to keep in mind that it could be smoldering.
And it's going to be hot right now,
Exactly.
so you're not just going to grab this out and pull.
So what I like to do is I like to take the char cloth off. I'll actually dump it onto the ground, and I will put my foot on top to immediately put out any embers that might be smoldering inside of that char cloth. And then as soon as it's cooled down, it's ready to go into your kit to be used for the next fire.
So, but we're looking right now, we're looking for smoke coming from inside, which we're not seeing.
No. So yeah, it could take just a few moments. And then, you know, there have been days where I've left char cloth to go for hours for the entire day. And then at the end of the day, just because it's been kept in that, you know, confined sort of space inside that container, it won't burn off. By the end of the day, it'll be ready to go.
So we can't overcook a char cloth.
Right, you can just sort of set it and forget it.
How about now? I see flames coming out of there.
So now, you know, using something like your camp axe, you can try to take this off. And yeah, so there's flames coming out, which means that the char cloth on the inside has, you know, started to smolder.
Do we want to blow it out anyway, or just there's smoke?
And then, yeah, set it back on the fire just so it gets back to sort of smoky. You can set it right on the peripheries. There you go.
Again, I don't care what century you're in, you need to be careful around a fire. Notice Jacob and I are both using tools like the knife or like the axe and not just reaching in. This will burn you. Please be careful if you try it. The char cloth is going to end up looking like this, and we'll show a little bit of it when it's done. But for now, I want to say thanks for sharing your skills with us. Really appreciate you helping us find a way that's a connection to what life was like in the Revolutionary War era for people of every stripe, civilians, soldiers, whether American, British, German, French. This is something we all have to do to be able to survive, is be able to make fire. And thanks for sharing that with us.
Exactly, yeah, it's no problem. This is going to be more than just military. It's going to be something that people of all walks of life are going to be doing.
Excellent. Well, it's a part of life, and we think it'll give you another chance to find a connection to the people on the American continent during the Revolutionary War. Thanks for spending your time with Revolutionary Gazette, and thanks for Jacob for sharing with us. We'll see you again soon.